Hello there everyone, I'm Christina at CSLdesigns and today I'm going to show you how to make these Wirework wedding bracelets, and this is what they look like. So what we have are individual little links that we make, and then we attach rose montees to each of them to get a lovely sparkle, and goes all the way along there to each of the links. We just attach them all together using jump rings. And then because it's basically chain that we're making, they're going to sit lovely on the wrist because they're going to be quite fluid in the movement, and then also be very comfortable to wear, while we then have that sparkle going all the way along. So you can obviously make it the length that you want for yours by making more or less links, so it's easy enough to adjust the size. And what I've done as well is I've finished off the ends, in my case here with a lobster claw clasp, and extended chain on the other end, so it's also adjustable in that way. But obviously you can use whatever kind of clasp that you want to. So I'm going to be making a whole suite of wedding jewellery here that's going to match nicely together as well. Obviously you don't have to use it for wedding jewellery, but you can use it for any other occasion that you want to. But in this tutorial here I'm going to show you how to make the bracelets, so if you want to learn, then keep watching. So these are the materials that we're going to use. First of all, here I have my two different gauges of regular round silver coated copper wire, and the first one is a 0.8mm. This is going to be the base wire, and then here I have a really fine wire which is a 0.25mm, so this is going to be used to add in the rose montees. And I have those here. So these rose montees are 4mm ones, and I'm just using Swarovski ones in a crystal AB to add a nice sparkle. And then we just need our findings and jump rings to add all the links together. So I have some really small jump rings here. I'm using 4mm ones, so about 4 or 5mm ones to keep it nice and delicate. And then I'm just using a lobster claw clasp and extended chain to finish it off nicely. Obviously you can use whatever kind of clasp that you prefer. Now I'm going to leave the material list and any links you might need down in the description box below there, so feel free to check that out. Otherwise, let's get all the materials ready and let's get started. And then we need to cut some lengths of our wire, and per link we'll need one length of a 0.8mm of about 15 centimeters. And make sure it's nice and straight here so we don't have any kinks or bends in it. And then we also need a length of a 0.25mm here, which is what we're going to add the rose montee with. Now you can choose to either cut a length per link, so a short length, so also about 15 centimeters, or you can choose to use a longer length like I have here, so maybe cut about a meter or so. And then I'm going to start using this from one end, and then add my first rose montee to the first link, and then cut off the excess, and then the excess that I have from that I can still keep using for the next ones. It's just personal preference really, whichever way you prefer to do that. So the main pliers I'm going to use to make these links here are my 6-step bell making pliers that look like this, and I'm going to be using the two smallest steps on them to make nice fine links. The reason that I'm using these pliers here is because when you choose a step, you know exactly what size loop you're going to get with your wire, and it's going to be consistent throughout. Now you can do that with round nose pliers, you just have to make sure you get the exact point on the round nose pliers every time that you want, which can be difficult because they're graduated, but that's why I recommend these. So I then grab my pliers here, and then also my first length of wire for the first link. And then what I want to do is start towards one end and just leave a little bit of a tail there. So we need to make the very first loop, which in my case is going to be the very smallest step first of all. So I need to bring the long end of my wire around that side of my pliers. Basically bring it all the way around and just move the pliers however you need to. So this long end now overlaps the short end of the wire there. So something like that, and it then comes back opposite direction to that short end. And make sure you kind of press it up a little bit. Get it in the right position. And then we have a very first little loop there. And then moving on to the next one, because this is kind of one of the side ones, then we need to make the larger one. So I'm going to move to the next step up and make a loop around that. So I'm going to place my pliers a little bit up the long end of the wire from that first loop. Make sure you leave a bit of a space between the loop and your pliers. Something like that. It doesn't have to be perfect because we can always adjust it a bit, but just kind of get the rough idea in there. And then I'm going to bring the long end around this again. Now this loop is going to be the same but just slightly larger, but otherwise made in the same way. And then again that this long end overlaps the other wire that we've already made the loop with, and then come back out here. So you can see we're kind of working our way around, and then you want this long end of the wire to basically come out in the same direction as the opposite side, but just obviously mirrored. So something a bit like this. Keep looking at it from the front so we can kind of judge how it looks and if it's nice and symmetrical. Now if you need to kind of tighten this up a bit, you can always take your pliers in there and then roll the loop closer down to the other one if it's too far away, or you can open it up a bit by rolling it outward. And then when you're happy with how it sits, I do leave a little bit of a space between the two loops though, but not too much either. I actually think maybe I just want to roll it a little bit, but not too much, just something like that. And then for the last loop, that's going to be, the last loop on this side is going to be the same as the first one, so I move back to the smallest step, again towards the outside, and then I bring the long tail around that, and this time I bring it underneath the other wire, and again, see, this maybe needs to just be rolled in a little bit, something like that. And just make sure it's as symmetrical as possible, so you have about the same gap between all the loops there on both sides. And obviously the loops themselves, if you're using these pliers, will be the size that we want. And then we have the long end just coming kind of downwards a little bit over towards the opposite side. But first of all, I just want to get rid of the short end there because it's a little bit in the way right now. So I then just want to flip these little loops that I've made so far around to the back, because that's where I kind of want to cut this off. And I'm going to get my flush cutters out because we want to just cut off that excess little end of the tail that we left in the beginning, but we need to make sure we do it flush, so the end of the wire that's going to be left is going to end up meeting up with itself. So I'm going to place my pliers where I want the cut to be, and it's going to be right on the kind of upper side of the wire that is crossing over. Cut off the excess like that and get rid of it there, so that when I take my chain nose and go in and kind of flatten out, because right now it's a little bit like a jump ring would be if it's open, it's not flush and flat, so I want to just squeeze them together. So basically the end of the wire that's left now is butting up against itself, the side of itself further along, and that basically more or less closes up the loop, something like that. And also we now don't have that little end of the wire in the way. So I then grab my bail making pliers again, because we need to then make all the loops on the other side as well, so basically match the first half here. So this is just half that we've made so far, and I'm flipping it back to the front that we've been working on, so I have my long end of the wire kind of going up to that same side as it was before. Then I want to place my pliers a bit down, because we first of all need to make the loop equivalent to this first one that we made, but below it. So the long end here in the middle is going to be crossing from the right and going over towards the left, and we're going to start making loops here and again working our way around. And I want to make sure the smallest loop is again the one I'm going to bring my wire around. Now just bring it around here, rotate your piece and your pliers however you need to, and then bring the end of the wire over itself. And then we just want to adjust this until we're happy with how it looks. So we want to make sure that this little loop that we're making is going to sit across from the first one. So if we just need to kind of roll it in or roll it out to make it fit nicely. Like that, and then roll it in a little bit. Look at it from different angles so you can judge it nicely. Something like that looks pretty good. And again, I have them a long end overlapping there and then going in the direction to then make the middle one, which is the slightly larger one. So the next step up on my pliers. So place my pliers, so I'm going to be bending my wire around the larger step there. Again, same principle, you go up a little bit from that loop that we just made. So there's going to be some space between these two loops. And this now needs to sit as straight across from the other larger one on this side here, the middle one, as possible. So like this, and here I'm bringing the end underneath. And then you can just take it out and have a look at it, and then just see what needs to be adjusted. I feel like I kind of need to roll it up a little bit more. So I'll bring it a little bit closer, because the gap between them is a little bit too large there. So I'm just rolling it down slightly. And then once you've done that, you just adjust the long end of the wire there to bring it in the direction so that then will fit for the next loop. Something a little bit like this, I think. Seems nice and symmetrical so far. And then the final little loop to fit in this last little gap here. Again, this is going to be the smallest step on the pliers, and bring the end around that step so we again get another loop. And I'm just bringing it over here because we then need to cut off the excess, so it doesn't really matter if you bring it over or under. But otherwise, just take your pliers out, keep checking it, see if you think it's nice and symmetrical, because you just want to make sure that it is before you cut the excess off, because if you're not quite happy with it, you can adjust it now while you still have this excess wire to kind of play around with, rather than cutting it off and you're more or less stuck with how it is, barring any minor little adjustments. But just make sure you're happy with it. And then we also need to go in and cut off the excess of this little tail. And the way that we do that is the exact same way as the first little end that we cut off. So I'll take my flush cutters, go in right where the wire is overlapping itself to basically complete that loop, and then just cut off the excess. Something like that. And then I take my chain nose or flat nose pliers and flatten that down. Just make sure it's nice and flush, so the very end again is sticking in towards the side of itself, but still we have that complete loop in place. And here we have the first little shape for the length that we need. So then to add in the rose montee, I'm just getting my length of the 0.25mm that I've already cut ready. Whether you're working with a shorter or longer length is completely up to you. And then I take my link here, and first of all I want to attach this, so I'm just working towards one end of the 0.25mm. So just leaving a short little tail there, enough just to wrap around a couple of times. Then I have the other length that we're going to attach the rose montee with. But where I'm placing this is I'm just making sure that I'm working towards the front of the piece where the rose montee is going to be added. So the way you can tell that is we have a wire crossing across the middle, and it's where the side that it does that to is the back of it, and the side here where it's kind of a gap, then that's the front where the rose montee is going to fit into it. So I'm leaving that little tail and I'm putting it next to what will be the first and the second loop. Doesn't matter which side you do it on because they're both the same. So between the small one and the large one towards this side here, and then I want to bring it down between those two loops, but the very end here I want to bring them up just like that, so just on the other side of that wire but towards the middle, and then just pull it up, and then as I'm pulling that tight it's just going to wrap around that little space we have between the loops. And I just need to do that again because this was just once. I need to kind of secure it in place and then pull it tight again, making sure that the wraps are sitting flat next to each other so they're not overlapping in any way. Just double check that, and then I'm just going to bring it back around again. I actually think mine are just overlapping a little bit. Something like that there. Now they're all nice and flat. And then I'm just bringing it back out to the side as if I was going to wrap around again, but for now I'm just going to leave it there. And again we can just use a little tail to hold on to if we need to. Then now I have my longer length here, which is where I'm going to add in my rose montee. So I just take that and it looks like that. So we have the crystal and the AB coating on one side, which is obviously the front of it. You get that nice bling. On the other side we have these little channels in kind of a cross or an X shape, and those are the ones we want to put our wire through. So I'm just gonna, doesn't matter to begin with what direction you put your wire through, just put it through from one side to the other, and then I want to bring it all the way down to my little link here, and then making sure that we bring it around to the front of the piece and then push it down, let it fall all the way down to sit in this little gap that we have in the middle, and making sure that the crystal part of it is facing upwards to obviously be the front. And then this wire is naturally kind of crossing over to the other side, so the other half of it, but also basically in the same place but on the other half. So it naturally wants to come down between those two loops there. So I'm going to then just leave it there, take the end of my wire And now basically go through in the exact same way as I just did when I attached it, but making sure that that rose montee sits in the middle and stays in place, because obviously now we're attaching it and fastening it in place. So now make sure you bring this end of the wire up, basically straight through the middle, so right underneath the large loop, but above the rose montee. So we then again wrap around the little space, the wire in the little space between these two loops. Bring it around again. Come up in the same way, just like that. Again, as I'm pulling this tight, making sure that the wraps align flat next to each other. And bring it around one more time. So we've wrapped it 3 times kind of, but I'm not going to bring it around in the same place again. Just want to use my pliers here. You can always use chain nose pliers to help kind of place this wire exactly where we want it to sit, and also if you need to tighten up the wraps a little bit, because you can't really get in there with your fingers, it's a bit too small. But then I'm bringing it just around the back of that large loop, so from this side here over to the other side, but now in between the other 2 loops, so the large one and the other small one. And then here I'm then coming from the top and going down basically in the same space, but just on this opposite side of that large loop. So this is wrapping around once now, and then I do the same thing again to bring the wire down through. You can try and just push that rose montee out of the way a little bit if you need to. Bring the end and the rest of the wire all the way through. Again, make sure the wraps are flat next to each other to keep it nice and neat. And now what I want to do is fasten the rose montee in the other direction here as well. So I'm going to take the end, and as if we're wrapping around this wire here one more time, instead of going down through there, I'm actually going to go through the other hole in the rose montee above the wire. So it's crossing through like that there. Again, coming back down to the other half. And then just pull your wire all the way through it, nice and gently. And also, so we make sure that when we're pulling it tight here, this little loop, so the 0.25 mil, is still going to go in between the same place as the other wraps that we just did, and kind of continue them. But now it's just coming through the other hole in the rose montee. And again, you can just take your chain nose and kind of tighten these up if you want to. Rather do that as we go. So something like that. And then we just have the final little attachment here. So again, I'm going to go to the very end of the wire. And then same principle here on this side. We'll go in between these 2 loops. And then we need to come up from the back. And again, just below basically that large loop in the middle, but above the rose montee. Pull that tight, so that's one wrap. Come up in the same place. And pull that tight. And then I'm not going to go through again, I'm just going to bring this wire around as if it's going to go through again, kind of do another wrap, but instead of bringing it through, just going to tighten them up here. I'm just going to push it around to the back, where we then also have the other wire, so the initial tail that we left, and then the rose montee is basically attached now. So just like that. So all we need to do now is finish off the excess of this weaving wire. So for that, I'm going to get my flush cutters out again, because we need to cut off the excess. So I'm flipping my piece here to the back, because my wires are kind of wrapping around, so they're going naturally towards the back for the next wrap. But instead of bringing them through, like I said, I'm just going to take one at a time and then bring this around so it kind of lays flat. And then I'm going to cut off the excess, but making sure I leave a very short little tail as I'm cutting off the excess. Something like that. Then I take my chain nose pliers, and then just basically this little end that's left now, I'm going to just push that in. So it kind of continues the wrap a little bit, but at the same time it gets hidden in this little area behind the rose monte, so it's not going to be obvious or sticking out anywhere or catching or scrapping on anything. And the other one, I'm doing the same thing. So just bring that around as if you're continuing the wrap, but instead of going through, just going to cut off the excess, making sure I've left a short little tail that I can then push down with my chain nose pliers. And what I like to do is I kind of push it down and then I roll it in the direction that the wrap is going to kind of continue it and make sure it gets tucked away in behind the back there. And there we go, we've now finished off that wire as well. And this is now a finished link. It looks like this. So all we have to do now is obviously make however many links that we need. And what I also just want to mention is you can adjust the size of this a little bit, because once you've made your initial loops there to create the basis of the link, what you can do then find is when you want to add in your rose monte, you might find that it can be a little bit too tight or a little bit too loose if you don't have the exact right spacing. So a way to fix that is you can, by pulling on either end there, open it up a little bit, or push it together by tightening up a little bit like that. So just basically measure against the rose monte there before actually attaching it. So this is a little tip. You can always adjust it like that a little bit because the wire is pretty malleable. So like I said, just make however many links you need, and then all we need to do is attach them together using jump rings. And we do that by grabbing a jump ring first of all with some flat nose or chain nose pliers. And then obviously first of all we want to open it up. So I'm just grabbing the other pair of pliers and then pushing them away from each other like you would open a jump ring normally. And then we just need to make sure we add our links in the right order, in the right direction rather, so they lay flat when we made the whole bracelet and obviously sit nicely on the wrist. So first of all, we need to go through the larger loops there, so the ones kind of at the points or the middle on either side. And this one is facing this direction, so I have the front facing towards my hand, you could say, and the back of it facing away from me. Then I take another link, and again I'm going through the same loop on it, but this needs to be facing in the opposite direction. So the back of it needs to face towards my hand and the front with the rose monte away from me. So they end up basically hanging back to back. Let's bring that in there, something like that. And then we just close it back up, because that's how we then achieve, let's close that completely, that they lie flat and wouldn't sit nicely on the wrist, obviously lying flat there, instead of being facing opposite each other. And that's how you then just want to attach all the links together. So these are then the Wirework wedding bracelets that I made to help celebrate the royal wedding that we have coming up in the UK. So of course the rose montes add a lovely sparkle to the piece here that makes it very suitable for a wedding, and also the individual links that we made, very elegant as well. But obviously you don't have to use them for a wedding, you can use it for any occasion that you want to. Now I'm going to be making a whole matching set of wedding jewelry here, so as I release the tutorials they're going to be added to a playlist as well, so you can check that out in the description box below. But then this tutorial here was for how to make these bracelets to go in this set, so I really hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching it, and I'll see you in the next one.